Welcome, welcome. Waiting to see if it's gonna start actually going. Is it going yet? It says I started streaming less than a minute ago, but it's still not showing up. Yes, right, okay. Now I can hear me. I can hear me now. The rain has gone. Welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, I should say. Yeah, just about evening. I deliberately waited until 6:39 p.m. Because I was thinking about the only way you can get the 369 on the clock is 6:39. So anyway, yeah. Welcome, folks. There is a chat room, but I might not be interacting with the chat much for a while. So yeah, I'll come back to that in a bit. Hello, Uni Black Sister and Soul Bollocks and P Murph. Hello. I may come back to the side chat in a bit, but I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about and a lot of things I want to mention and screen share, etc. Hopefully, you can hear me okay and everything. I could hear it coming through earlier, but we'll see how things go. I'm going to try doing some screen share of an old video. Yeah, let me just say this right up front as well. This might be quite a long broadcast. And if you've been around for a while, you probably know that I'll usually talk for at least an hour to 2 hours anyway. So if I'm forewarning you it's going to be a long broadcast, then it might be a few hours. Maybe. We'll see how things go. It's a lovely, bright evening. Maybe you should be out and about enjoying a barbecue somewhere or something, or getting some sunshine rather than listening to me rattling away on the internet. But yeah, just forewarning, it might be a long one, and I'm gonna try and do my best to talk about the general situation and talk in a general fashion rather than targeting or naming individuals. I might end up having to name some individuals just to help explain the situation and how things have been going. But this is not intended to be a personal attack. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to like point fingers. It's not about that. It's about a methodology which reoccurs again and again and again, in particular during times of crisis or heightened anxiety within either the nation state or globally. And of course, you know what's going on at the moment. So there's a very sort of high level of anxiety that is being propagated by the mainstream media. So of course, this kind of shit has to start happening again. And I've noticed various things, and I think I might have mentioned things here and there in the last few episodes and on the broadcasts on the Wednesday night on the reality chat channel, doing the reality chat when we look at the news and things like that. I know I've mentioned it a few times in one way or another. But this is something that reoccurs during this kind of time, during these kind of interesting times. So I thought, okay, right, let's drag some of these people out into the light. Let's drag some of these examples out into the light. Because one thing that these people don't like is doing things openly out in the light, as in the view of the audience, the general audience, the public. They'd prefer to use sock accounts and do things in the shadows, in the background, shit like that. That's the way their methodology operates. I'll come back to that later. What I want to do first is play a video clip, part of the video anyway. There's no need to play all of it because it was relevant to the time when I made it. Um, but this is from 6 years ago, nearly, near enough. This is why I've titled today's broadcast Don't Inhale Your Own Gas. It's a blast from the past. And that will hopefully become more self explanatory as I get into it. Right, let's just stop that screen share. That was just the usual title page that's on my intro, but I didn't pull the intro up. I thought I'll just put the image up and I'll say, welcome to your awakening. Please remain calm while your reality is adjusted. Right, okay, screen share that one. On the Chrome tab, I really hope you'll be able to hear the audio okay, because it is primarily what I'm talking about in this video that I want you to be able to hear. This is from 2014, and at the time there was either an individual or a group of people, I don't know which, but I was receiving troll messages, comments, emails, and the one particular character, like I said, I don't know if it was a single individual or multiple, used to like sending me little video clips that were just, in a way, a lot of it is like what most people would understand as classic trolling, old school trolling. one of the classic ones that used to do the rounds was the, what's his name, Rick, you've been Rick rolled. Yeah, I'm never going to give you up. And then there was the ball in the face. Somebody throwing a ball at somebody else and it hits them square in the face. It's like, almost like you're supposed to pass it on. But there's simplistic trollisms. But this one he'd sent me stood out a bit because of how it had these subtle layers. But anyway, I'll play it. But as I say, it's relevant in terms of what I was talking about at the time. That was relevant to me receiving these kind of trollish comments and whatever. But what I said in this video is just as relevant now, and even more so in relation to what I want to get into, talking about the methodologies of how they do this kind of stuff deliberately. It's not just your imagination, and it's not just some teenage boy in his mum's basement who likes, gets his jollies out of annoying people online. No, not at all. But anyway, I'll play this, and like I said, hopefully you'll be able to hear the audio. Just let me know in the chat if you can't.
When the human DJ makes a tune, the little doggy replays the tune. I'll freeze it on the cutie little doggy chitty face. Look at his little face. That face says, I'm going to poo in your bed later. But yes, the implication being that the human DJ is the master, and in reference to myself, from my perspective, I am the little doggy subordinate. Whatever the master says, I repeat on the other deck, etc. That's the simplistic gaslighting psychology of this. But the actual video itself is quite well crafted for that reason. Even if for the majority of people, they may see this as just a cutesy doggy video and not realise the potential use that a lot of the trolls out there will use this for. And guaranteed this will spread amongst their little forums where they congregate in the darkness. But anyway, to go through the psychology of this and why, as I said earlier, you may be subjected to this kind of stuff, but you should just let it wash over you like water off a duck's back. If anything, you should take it as a validation that somebody out there is afraid of you. Because trolls exemplar transference. Gaslighting is a form of trollism. Use that modern vernacular. It's a good coverall terminology to include this kind of stuff. But trolls exemplar transference. They perceive you as a threat, a perceived threat to them. It may not be a genuine threat, but they perceive a threat, therefore they're reacting to it. They're attempting to attack something because they're afraid of it, so they need to attack it. They need to deal with this perceived threat. That's the way their thinking is going, whether they're conscious of that or not. For the majority of your general trolls who throw abuse around at other people, they're not really consciously aware of why they're doing it. They're not comprehending how it is that they are externalizing their own shadow, their own inner demons onto you, so that then they can attack them to try and resolve them. But this kind of gaslighting just demonstrates weakness and fear, because as most trolls do, they're too cowardly to be direct, to say this kind of stuff to your face. A troll won't say it to your face. They do it surreptitiously, deceptively, underhandedly in methods such as this, so that they can sit in the corner and giggle, go, look what I said to him, which again is just a demonstration of fear. When somebody sends you something like this, think of it this way. See the logic of the psychology of what they're actually saying to you. You are a threat to them. You are actually the master in this situation, because if you weren't their master, they wouldn't be trying to attack you to bring you down, to put you into the position of the little pet doggy. So what they're saying to you, or what they are revealing to you, for the majority of them, they don't even comprehend this, they're unaware of this in and of themselves. They are revealing to you that they see you as the master, and therefore they need to attack you and try and convince you that you are the subordinate. That logically implies that you are already the master. I'm not your master. You're wasting your time and energy into trying to deal with your own shadow by throwing it at other people. This is just the ways that trolls will try and shut people down. Don't let it get to you. Keep out there, keep talking, keep sharing this information. As I said, this exemplars their own transference of their own fear, their own lack of work on their own inner knowledge, self-knowledge, dealing with their own shadow, dealing with their own demon, rather than creating, they need to destroy because they perceive a threat. So take their attempts at gaslighting, psychic driving, trollisms in general as a validation that you must be over the target. So keep doing what you're doing, folks. Keep evolving. I'll leave it there. Take care. Catch you soon.
Got to remember to press the little mute button on my microphone. Yeah, trolls light their own gas. Hence the title today, Don't Inhale Your Own Gas. It's a blast from the past. Yeah, trolls have an unthinking habit of lighting their own gas. And as a classic example of that, as I've just been checking the different pages with the stream on and whatever on the YouTube, I just noticed I got 9 thumbs down. 9 thumbs down. I haven't even been talking for more than a few minutes. Obviously, that clip is about 4 or 5 minutes long. What we're up to, about 10, 20 minutes so far. If that, 15, 20 minutes. And there's already 9 thumbs down, which demonstrates that they can't even have the intellectual honesty to listen to what is being said before trying to elicit an emotional peer pressure response from the other viewers. They need validation. So just as I was talking about in that video clip, they are afraid of you, and they demonstrate it by this desire to make you subordinate to them. Because in their mind, and whether they're conscious of it or not, they might not realize the process of their own thinking. They already perceive you, they project onto you the idea that you are bigger than them, you are above them, you are standing on a podium, on a pedestal, you are looking down on them, because they are already belittling themselves. They have already internalized a lot of the messages that the system puts onto us, and they have adopted that, and they then project it out onto others around them. So if they perceive that you're too uppity, you're talking far too clever for me, Matt, that means you must think you're better than me. You must be up on a pedestal talking down to it. Like I am now, I'm talking like somebody's a child, because they act like children, intellectual, mental, spiritual, psychological children. So they attack you because they need to pull you down. they need to validate themselves by feeling that you are on a level playing field or lower than them. So that's why in that example with the little doggy, it's a good way. It's well crafted in the sense of it subtly gets across a psychological message without needing to say it directly. And for a lot of people, they would watch that and they wouldn't realize that subtle subconscious message that's being given to them. So, just notice in the chat, hello guys in the chat, more people joining in, taking names and killing dragons. Hello. And I did see Murph posting in, what else you got to do when you have to, yeah, mate. Yeah, I've got the sun a little bit today. Not too much though, but it was nice getting out in the sun. I jumped in too early, a decade maybe. I expect far worse to come if we can't back them down. Yes, exactly right. This is a part of the reason why I was thinking of doing this. And Jesse, hello, mate. I'll happily send you an invite if you're available. You're welcome to jump in. But as I mentioned at the start, I might be talking for a while. So just send me a message on Skype or whatever if you do want to join in. And Society of the Spectacle, same. If you've got a Skype connection, guys, just let me know. I'll send you an invite. You're welcome to join in as well. And I know Dr. Rock was online earlier. I'll send invites out to him as well if he wants to join in. But I know it can be a bit frustrating when somebody who is talking at length goes on and on and on for an hour and you're waiting for your chance to say something. But yes, that's another part of what I want to get into. So that was from several years ago. You're doing yard work right now. Okay, but no worries. Yeah, enjoy the sunshine. Now you get in the spring in Kanukistan. Rumpled foreskin. Hello. That's a good name in the chat. And Stewie, sorry, mate, I nearly missed you as it was scrolling up. Hello. Right, okay, let's get me notes out and I'll try and stop being distracted and actually get into why and wherefore and blah, 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 talking about this. And is my StreamYard chat going to update properly? Yes, right, okay, thank you. So, in the video, I mentioned a few key phrases. Psychic driving. If you want to search for that on the internet, you'll find lots of good information out there about that. And in that video, that is an example of subtle subconscious psychic driving. They're trying to steer your thinking in a certain direction through the use of subtle cues. They're not direct statements, they're not instructions, they're not even NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. They're just subtle cues in the actions and the symbology of what's taking place. A lot of mainstream media relies on that kind of psychic driving, the influence of symbols, pictures, imagery, iconography, etc. These are things that are indoctrinated into us from an early age through the education system, the media, repetition, etc. We absorb them, we internalize them, and they become cues that can be thrown out there whenever they want to initiate a certain thinking pattern. So some of the classic ones are like the triangle, the pyramid symbol, especially if it's got the little all-seeing eye in it, or it's a truncated one with the eye on top and things like that. The pentagram, the swastika, there's various singular symbols that in and of themselves can elicit immediately a certain thought pattern or certain emotional remembrance, because a lot of it is based on memories that are put into us through our life as we grow, as we pick up these things. It's not necessarily all bad. That isn't to imply that everything like that is just automatically bad. It's not. Sometimes that kind of information is useful to us. It's beneficial in various ways. So having that kind of cued reaction isn't always necessarily a bad thing. So just to put that out there as well. But yeah, to make the point about some of the stuff that's been happening recently, and I did make a sort of verbal note of this in a previous Monday episode and on the Wednesday nights. I've noticed there's been more trolling. I'll use simplistic descriptions, get on with it. There's been more trolling activity in the recent months since all this situation has started occurring, the global coup of the crown infection, the infected crown. And a lot of that I noticed seemed to concentrate primarily towards either creating argumentum ad infinitum. In other words, they tried to push people into one camp or another, a left or right, a Fauci versus Kaufman. I think I used that example the other week. You know, you got to pick a camp, decide who you support, and then you attack the other side and say they've got everything wrong and they don't know what they're talking about. Blah, blah, blah. A lot of that is the usual simplistic Hegelian dialectic of them putting you one side or the other, etc., getting us to fight amongst ourselves while they carry on doing their thing. But there's also another common relied on methodology, which is the ad hominem, or to the man. That's what ad hominem means in just as a, it's Latin, isn't it, as far as I remember? Not Greek, yeah, Latin. Get them all mixed up because I can't speak any other, I can't speak those languages. I don't know those languages. I just know certain phrases and the etymology and how to break them down and stuff like that. But yeah, ad hominem means to the man. It is a common logical fallacy, and it means basically rather than addressing any of the points or information in the argument that is being presented to you, you instead attack the person, the messenger. So you attack the messenger and ignore the message. Now, if you look around, you'll commonly see this used as character assassination. I managed to catch the new first episode of Charlie Brooker's TV series thing that he does every so often, usually every year or so. I think it hasn't been on since he was doing all the Black Mirror stuff. But anyway, he's called it something like Viral Wipe because he used to do it based on News Wipe, and it was a somewhat stereotypically British, cynical, satirical view of the news, of the weekly news. And he'd like take the piss out of what's been on the TV and stuff like that. This time he's done it about the current infected crown situation. And I watched it, it's Charlie Brooker. Some of his stuff makes me giggle a bit. It's a comedy. Okay, fair enough. It's satire and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it had some subtle influences of don't question the narrative, don't question the official story. No. We can take the piss out of some of the silliness, some of the contradictions, like go to work, don't go to work, go to work, don't go to work. Those kind of things, yeah, they're safe for comedic resource, but actually addressing or questioning any of the outright bullshit and pointing out that outright contradiction to the argument, no, he sidestepped that. But the reason I'm mentioning it is they deliberately made a point of taking an out of context clip of David Icke when he did his little interview thing on London Real about, and it was a point when he was talking about the new telecommunications system which is being rolled out, new one that's like 4+1 and the seventh letter of the English alphabet. And he makes some point about the gigahertz range being used. And, the Charlie Brooker show is a BBC produced, BBC output show. And all they do is character assassinate David Icke. That is the target. They make no mention about the actual content of what he says. No question of the information in what he says, even in that out of context clip. They just completely ignore what he says and just go, oh, David Icke's crazy. He's talking crazy. He's still crazy. Automatic character assassination. This is a common methodology used by the system for those that get labeled heretical. And heretical means questioning. He who questions. In other words, you don't follow the dogma. You don't just repeat the expected mantra. You turn around and go, what do you mean it's this? I've got questions about that. You're a heretic. You get excommunicated, and in a character, in a metaphorical sense, as an analogy, you get burnt at the stake. Your character is publicly burnt at the stake, character assassination. Ad hominem, to the man, logical fallacy. This is a common methodology that they resort to because they know a large part of the public will react with that, like I was sort of talking about earlier with the trolls. They will react to that peer pressure, social group need for validation, such that if somebody attacks the person, they will feel that fear being queued up automatically because they have the same internalized fear that has been given to them by the system, that they're so worried about what everyone around them will think of them that they will ignore the original argument or information being presented, and they go, "Oh yeah, he's ugly, he's this, he's that, he's crazy, whatever." So they will more readily, the majority of people will more readily follow along with that attack process, and they'll quite quickly forget about what the information actually was or what the question was that was brought up. So I mentioned a while ago that I've noticed more of this occurring recently. And as I say, this is a standard methodology. They rely on a lot of, and I'm saying they, yes, the ubiquitous them and they, I'll come back to that. They rely on these kind of simplistic methods quite a lot. I'm calling them simplistic, but yeah, fair enough. That might sound a bit arrogant that I'm expecting other people to see it as being simple. But it is a simplistic method. It's not complicated. You don't need to do a load of pre-preparation or planning or setup to enable it to happen. You just go, yes, I've heard his argument. Okay, ignore the argument. It's too difficult to deal with, but he's got a really long beard. Let's imply that he's scruffy. Yeah, attack him for being scruffy. All the other people around listening to him will be like, "Oh yeah, I don't like it when people reject me because I'm scruffy, when they tell me I'm not dressed properly. Oh no, you're all fear. And the fear is automatic. They're pulled out straight away, and that becomes the pathway that they follow. So, in commentary under some of my videos recently, let's see if I can screen share this and show you some of the, just as an example. I should have it open, which page that one is now, of course, because I've got it set to the other tab. So you might see a little bit of infinity. Don't fall into the infinity yet. I mean, I've considered going through the entirety of the chat from Monday's episode because there is a lot of comments in there that are relevant to what I want to talk about, what I am talking about. But it would take quite a while. Maybe I will in a minute. But anyway, first, just to show this kind of stuff. This is another example of a completely empty account, a sock account, most likely. I'm saying most likely because I can't prove that absolutely. I don't have the access to YouTube's back end, to Google servers and whatever to be able to demonstrate that as a proof. But you see this stuff constantly. Completely empty channel, nothing on it. And it is so simplistic to make up new channels now on YouTube that this is not difficult for somebody to do, even if they are just some teenage boy in his mom's basement who wants to try and piss somebody off. You can make up a sock account quite readily, and then you post under Monday's episode. The irony is, if you get COVID, you're toast cookie. COPD, good luck. So, yeah, I have COPD. That is an immediate attempt, or an attempt to immediately elicit fear, to try and cue a fear response. But it demonstrates that he did not listen to what's talked about in that particular episode, or the previous episode from last week was talking about similar kind of effects of how the system is using fear on people to try and herd them in one direction or another. My response, I'm not going to read it all, but basically I just point out the fact that, yeah, I've already said that myself in the episode. If you'd actually listened to it, you'd be aware of that. I've made that point deliberately, because if this virus is all they say it is, blah, 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 if anyone's got something to be worried about, I have, but I'm still going about my day. I see what they are projecting out on the mainstream media, and it is based entirely on fear projection. And I see that, and just like Frank Herbert, I think it's Herbert, wrote about in Dune, fear is the little death. I let it pass through me and over me, and I see I'm still there after the fear was gone. And the quote from Bruce Lee that I've often put up recently, courage is not the absence of fear, it is the ability to act in the presence of fear. And that's even suggesting that I'm afraid. I'm not. So this attempt to elicit fear, I'm trying to make a point in those videos about, well, they're just trying to manipulate you via your fear. What have you really got to be afraid of? Is it fear appearing as false evidence appearing real? Do you actually have anything to fear? And even if there is any reality to the potential dangers, there's various things you can do to mitigate those dangers. So yet again, are you allowing a very, very small probability to be amplified into a massive well of fear that is then being used to dominate you? Where's your courage? Why are you getting on with your life despite the fear? Because the probabilities are such, and this could go on for a long time in figuring out, calculating the probabilities and possibilities to the nth degree. So I need to, which is it, 39.6% or 36.9%? Oh, I need to know. There's 3% difference. Look at the odds in most casinos. The house usually wins. Well, the house always wins. But anyway, the point being, the probabilities, even if you accept the official narrative, and in recent days it's changing rapidly, to correlate to what I say we, because it's not just me on these episodes normally, on the Monday nights anyway, and Wednesday nights, what we have been talking about since this whole thing began. The probabilities are so small, even based on the official narrative, that you should not be locking yourself away in your home, constantly washing your hands, covering yourself in alcohol, shit, wearing gloves, wearing masks, wearing giant all-in-one body Johnny's, body Durex prophylactic. What are you doing? While you are suffering from that fear, you are acquiescing to a lot of the changes to your society that they are wanting to implement so fiercely at the moment because of the year and the time and their agenda, and this is required to happen so they can move to the next step. How much probability do you have of being in a traffic accident? Quite a lot. Even if you're not a driver, even if you don't own a vehicle, you're going about your normal day-to-day life in the everyday world we share, there is quite a good probability of you suffering in some manner in a traffic accident. Do you lock yourself at home because of that potential risk? No. Each year there is a seasonal influenza that goes around. You have a percentage possibility of catching it. If you catch it, you then have a percentage possibility of suffering quite severely from it. Possibly, again, smaller and smaller the possibilities that potentials get of actually dying from that illness. But do you go through all this shit of social distancing and muzzling yourself with a piece of paper, deluding yourself that that's going to protect you from the illness? No, you don't. So they are absolutely reliant on the use of unfounded fear, false evidence appearing real. So a lot of what I do in my broadcasts is trying to help people see through that, to see the methodologies and the way it can be subtly encoded and suggested and put in front of you. Because once you can see the magician's trick, you no longer believe the bullshit. Yeah, you can see how it is done, therefore it no longer affects you. So these kind of comments. So let's get back more into, where's my notes? Right. Often they'll use things like, I mentioned the ad hominem, but other methods that they'll rely on. Again, it's logical fallacies, and they rely on most people not having any comprehension of philosophy and the use of logic and logical fallacies, because the standard education system in every country no longer teaches that kind of classical education, which would include instruction in the trivium, which is one of the main foundational points of logic and philosophy. But anyway, one of the others is a straw man. Now, this is something that some people recently have been trying to do to me quite a lot. Every opportunity, it seems, they're trying to get in there and present some kind of straw man bullshit argument and accuse me or label me as something and then attack that label. All right, so I'm not sure about going through the whole of that episode because it would take a while. And I'll end up talking at length about each point as we go along, so it would take many hours. But we'll see if I can explain myself without needing to do that. But some of the points that are often brought up or thrown at me, I'll talk about the one main one, because this is an absolute classic in recent times on this internet medium, because most of the world, certainly the Western world, the modern world, the developed world, the whatever, particular first world, those kind of labels they put on us all. A lot of the modern world, I'll use that one, a lot of the modern world is geared now towards this internet technology and the use of internet medium, social media, things like that, video on demand. So this is where a lot of people get their information, get their perception of what's going on in the world, what's out there, what can they do, etc. Obviously there's an almost infinite amount of choice what you want to look at or read about, whatever. So certainly for the last 10 years, because I've been a netizen, one of those modern colloquialisms, a netizen, in other words, a citizen of the internet. I've made use of the internet since near enough it started, really since before it started, when I had the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 and stuff like that. And you had the old modem where you put literally the telephone handset in the modem, and you'd have to type in a phone number and the computer would and it would connect to some computer somewhere that wasn't the internet back then. It was just some server somewhere. And then they started linking all those servers together, from the ARPANET to the DARPANET to the internet. And you can look into the history of that, and it's all very enlightening. And you need to know some of that background to comprehend some of the methods that are used against you to manipulate you via this medium. So yeah, I've been making use of the internet since it near enough started. I think I first got connected onto the World Wide Web in 96, or the 95 or 96, something like that. And I've made use of it in one way or another ever since then. So I've watched the way it's changed. I have experienced the way it changed. I've seen how they gave us this open playing field of seemingly almost infinite possibility and information available to us, and allowed us to run around whatever direction we wanted. But over the years, have slowly built fences around it, and they've been slowly pulling those fences in. and they've turned it into a very controlled medium that suits their narrative, that transitions the mass of the general populace from reliance on the television and newspaper, print newspaper mediums, the old media, onto this new media. And they've been deliberately doing that. And any expectation that it was ever going to remain truly free and open is naive. They want us all transitioned. This was part of the agenda, the plan for many decades. So over the last several years, certainly, I've seen the advance of social media, the adoption of mobile devices, handheld tech that allowed people to take the internet wherever they were going near enough, and it's getting more and more so as they're putting up the satellites. It's near enough going to be complete global coverage. So wherever you go, you can get a signal and surf the net and be told by the YouTube of what to think today. And part of that has been a slow but steady appropriation of certain terminology so that they can reprogram people's thinking. This is something that I've often talked about over the years. I think near enough since I started really getting on track for what I felt was a useful way of approaching this stuff. So you're talking from about 2012 onwards, and the way I was trying to present what I was talking about was trying to point out a lot of these things. Appropriation of language so they can alter or redefine the definition of words, thereby affecting what people think about certain subjects, concepts, ideas, arguments, etc. And in doing so, in that Orwellian process, they can influence your thinking processes. So, in other words, if you suddenly, for some unauthorized reason, you have this unauthorized thought come into your head, they've already given you the structure that your mind will follow so that you self police, so that you run to an authority that will cure you of that viral infection of a bad idea, a naughty idea, or whatever, something that is outside of the state, as Mussolini put it in his definition of fascism and corporatism. Sorry, I was just looking for my notes again because they've moved as I was clicking through different screens. So I've watched this process of them appropriating words and definitions and the methodologies of things such as neuro-linguistic programming, psychic driving, subtle cueing, as in, without directly stating it, they're cueing a certain response, usually emotional, but it could also be thought processes and conclusions given to us pre-packaged. And one of the big selling points that they've jumped on for the last few years in that social media environment is psychology and cognitive behavior and cognitive behavioral manipulation and molding. And one of the favorite ones, because a common accusation that I direct at the people that think they're in charge of everything, that are doing a lot of this shit, is that they are narcissistic, psychopathic. Narcissism often comes as a sort of subcondition of psychopathy, because narcissists are notoriously lacking empathy for anyone else because all they care about is themselves. And that is also classically a subtrait of psychopathy. So the two are sort of go together hand in hand. So the system comes along and appropriates that and starts to use a reversal and reflection methodology to start getting the general populace to be convinced that they are the narcissistic ones. And I'm not denying that there is a lot of truth to the reality that, unfortunately, this social media technology has allowed people to become their own celebrities. And I'm completely, absolutely not unaware that can easily be said of what I'm doing right now. I'm just some guy on the internet making use of a YouTube platform to do my thing, and the system can then come along and point at me and say, he's a narcissist. This process of reflection, more than anything, is a process again of diverting blame, diverting culpability, distracting from the original source of the problem or the information contained within the argument. So it's similar to a straw man fallacy, where they accuse you of being something that you're not, that they can then attack you with, or they can cause you to self-police because they convince you that you are that thing, and you absorb that, accept it, internalize it, and it becomes your reality. So you walk around thinking, oh, I must be a narcissist because I was on the internet today and I've got, the system says all these people are narcissists, so therefore I must be a narcissist. And all these trolls keep turning up on my channel and telling me I'm a narcissist, so I must be a narcissist. And you spend so much time thinking about and worrying about whether or not you're a narcissist that you are a narcissist. Because narcissists only care about themselves. So you're spending all your time thinking about yourself and what other people think of you. That's sociopathy, that's narcissism, etc. So they trick a lot of people with that simple reversal. Classically, that's what the system relies on: inversion, which is reversal, reflection. It's also a logical manipulation, or a manipulation of logic used in sophistry, which just means the ability to debate, to have a dialectic. It is often underhanded because it relies on using trickery like that to fool the opponent or the audience witnessing the debate. So it makes it seem like the accuser has won the point, but really they haven't. They've used sophistry, trickery, to make it look like the original questioner is at fault. It's a pollution of the Socratic method. The Socratic method is a way of creating a pathway of questions that allows somebody to explore a concept for themselves, so they get true gnosis through self-realization as they make their way along that pathway of questioning. But yeah, the narcissism thing, let me do another screen share. Because this is the main thing that's been brought up in these chat comments and chat room accusations, even if they were only implied and not necessarily directly accused. J'accuse. Some people don't say it directly. They'll just go, oh, this guy sounds like a narcissist. But this is just simple description. This is on Mayo Clinic. It's just, what are the symptoms of, is it NPD, I think is an acronym, narcissistic personality disorder. Let's go through these because this might take a little time, and this is more relevant than me just pointing at particular comments in a chat room discussion. Have an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Let that sink in for a moment while I light me smoke. Have an exaggerated sense of self-importance. I'm sure there's many people in your life that think that you are important to them. So where does that self-importance come from? Are you important to somebody? And what does importance mean? What is important? But the main thing I want to point out just about that one sign and symptom is that implies that you are not really important. So having any sense of self-importance is somewhat questionable, because you're not Bill Gates, you're not Tony Blair, you're not the Queen, you're not somebody important, you're just little old you. I mean, obviously, it clearly states an exaggerated sense of. You could question, what do they mean by sense of? Again, they're implying that it's just an illusion, an allusion. You're not really important. You're certainly not important to yourself, which makes no sense whatsoever. Of course, you're important to yourself because it's you're existing, but an exaggerated sense of self. So, as I say, they're implying, subtly implying, this is a way that the system of authority, of the hierarchical control structure, puts you in your place of you are not one of those in the chosen club, as George Carlin put it. You do not have a golden ticket into that club. You're just little old you. You are a peon, a pleb, a minion. Whereas the reality is the entirety of that pyramid is supported by the foundation that holds it up. And the foundation is made up of all those little old me's that just go about their day to day, making the world run, making the world work, making the things you need to survive available to each other and trading between each other and blah, blah, blah. If there was just the so-called controllers left on the planet, they'd all die out because they wouldn't know how the fuck to do any day-to-day stuff for themselves. It's a little bit of an assumption because there might be some of them that have got just enough knowledge to be able to do things like build a water filtration system or something like that. But I doubt it, most of them. Yeah. Anyway, have a sense of entitlement and require constant excessive admiration. Again, let that sink in. Excessive admiration. What do they mean by excessive admiration? What kind of admiration is excessive? Is it okay to get a little bit of admiration? And how big is that little bit that you're allowed before you become a narcissist? If you hold the door open for somebody when you're leaving a shop and they're coming in and they say thank you, that's a moment of admiration. It's one way you can define it. It's gratitude, but gratitude comes often with admiration. They're grateful. They admire the fact that you've shown them that courtesy. For those that actually do say thank you in some manner. It might be unspoken, it might just be a nod and a smile, but same kind of thing. So what do they mean by excessive? And require constant excessive. What's constant? Is that every second? I love you, 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 I love you. Oh, I'm a narcissist. What do they mean by that? And a sense of entitlement. Again, that is classic authoritarian hierarchy belittlement of you. You're not entitled to anything. Where do you get this sense of entitlement from? You only get what you're given. You should be grateful for what you are allowed to have. You only exist because we allow you to. How dare you have any sense of entitlement to existence? Now, I'm overemphasizing some of these points deliberately to demonstrate the principle of what they're suggesting. This definition as well, this diagnostic definition, comes from the diagnostic manual, as far as I remember, more than likely being on a standard kind of platform like this, the Mayo Clinic. Anyway, let's carry on. Expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements that warrant it. Again, reinforcing the hierarchical claim to authority. What is an achievement? And who defines what counts as an achievement? Such what, do you get a certificate? I put my trousers on today. Do I get a certificate for putting my own trousers on? Is that an achievement? If I've got this achievement, does that mean, like, if I acknowledge this achievement, I'm now a narcissist? At what point does the acknowledgement of achievement verge into narcissism? Expect to be recognized as superior, reinforcing the illusion of a hierarchical authority. Recognized by who? Somebody further up that hierarchy? Somebody higher up on the ladder who looks down and goes, oh, you think you're on this? No, you get down on that other rung. Exaggerate achievements and talents. Again, what do they mean by exaggerate? What do they mean by achievements? What do they mean by talents? Some people are good at talking. If they're good at oration, which that's all that means, talking to people, preaching, proselytizing, using words in a live environment, like you're on a stage talking to an audience, like you're on speaker's corner talking to the crowd. So is that not a talent? What defines talent? Who creates those definitions of what is or is not a talent? And again, with the achievements thing, to be preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate. Yeah, preoccupied with fantasies. Is that belittling somebody's hopes and dreams? The majority of people who talk about success and how to be successful and achieving your goals and things like that will absolutely tell you to concentrate your thinking on achieving your goal. You go and listen to a lot of like Olympic athletes talking about how they train, and they will talk about getting into that zone in their mentality. They have to focus on winning. I am the winner. I am the winner. I will get it. I will be over that line first. So are they all narcissists? Because they're preoccupied with fantasies, because fantasy just means it's not actually a reality. So maybe that just means it's not a reality yet because it hasn't been achieved yet. It hasn't been concluded yet. So it's still in the realm of fantasy. It hasn't happened yet. But that doesn't mean it won't or can't or never happens. But again, you're not allowed to be thinking about being successful. Being powerful is a bit sort of playing into their game of what do you mean powerful? Yeah? Brilliance. I'm great. I am brilliant. Yeah, what do they mean by that? Brilliance, really, in its sort of definition, it means a shining, radiant light. Beauty or the perfect mate. It's like, yeah, I'm gorgeous, me. I deserve to go out with the most gorgeous women because I'm so gorgeous, me. Yeah. Whatever. It's, oh, man. Believe they are superior and can only associate with equally special people. Well, when I was at school, if you were associating with the special people, that meant you were in the remedial class where they used to put the kids who were either genuinely a bit retarded or had some kind of problem that meant they didn't really get into the usual curriculum, they couldn't concentrate, or they needed attention, or they needed help, they needed like medical aid constantly, things like, what do they mean special people? Who are the special people? You equal to special, again reinforcing the hierarchical illusion that you're not special. How dare you think that you're anything like Bill Gates, blah blah blah. Think of the stream of people that you're supposed to idolize. Believe they are superior. And that's something I can sort of maybe that's a little bit more, to me that's a bit more accurate as to what is under the definition of narcissism. They're not really superior, they just believe they're superior, and that belief requires a foundational acceptance. Get the cursor on it for highlighting it. Thank you. That belief requires a foundational acceptance that there is a hierarchy, that some can be superior to others, some can be inferior to others. And that's obviously relative in terms of, well, superior at what? Some people are better at running than others, so they're superior to the others that can't run as well as them. But this belief that they are superior, put that under definition of narcissism. Monopolize conversations and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior. Now, this is where I think classically a lot of the people out there that dislike me personally, or dislike what I say or what I talk about or how I talk about things, this is the main thing that they seem to fixate on. Monopolize conversations and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior. I talk at length. Once I get going, I'll quite happily talk at length. I've got a lot to say. That doesn't mean you have to listen. And at the same time, and I've pointed this out multiple times in the past when they've tried this kind of accusation before, oh, he's just a narcissist who loves listening to himself talk on the internet. So, okay, how many hours are there in a week? How many hours am I asleep? So that leaves that many hours. And out of that many hours, how many of those hours am I talking on the internet? Just think about that. I do a show on a Monday night, about 90 minutes to 2 hours on average, 90 minutes to 120 minutes. And a good chunk of that, certainly at least half of that, will be just me talking, because that was the whole reason I started doing that show in that manner in the first place, so that I could have an opportunity to have an hour or two for space for me to say things I felt I wanted to say without having to worry about stepping over other people's opportunity to speak. So I thought, okay, rather than me just butting into other people's conversation, I'll go over here and I'll do it in my own space. And then if people want to listen in by free will choice, they can click that link and tune in and watch and give it however much attention they choose to give it. But they want to imply that I'm invading your cognitive liberty and forcing you to listen to me, such that I'm monopolizing the conversation for so much time out of all those hours in the week. No. Monopolize conversations. I have a habit of talking a lot. And if I feel there's something important to say, I like to get the opportunity to say it. And I've always been grateful to Peter, who does the reality chat channel. He's really patient in the sense of he knows I've got that, I need to say this, Pete, let me say it, let me say this. And he will often give way to me butting in. I am a Tory and, bullying my way in. But in a group discussion environment, I make deliberate effort to not overtalk other people, because over the years of me doing this kind of stuff in this environment, I've seen how that kind of lack of decorum, call it that for want of a better way of describing it, but I'm sure some people have seen this kind of stuff when you have group discussions on the internet. If there's some people that just keep talking over others and never shut up and actually listen, they talk more than they listen, then it isn't really a conversation, is it? So who's actually the narcissist here? But I don't monopolize conversations, and I make deliberate effort to refer to what other people have said. I make deliberate effort to demonstrate by the way I say it, to give credit where credit is due for what, the contribution of the other speakers in the conversation. That's not monopolizing a conversation in the definition of narcissism. Narcissism is me, 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 me. You shut up, shut up, shut up. Listen to me. Talk about me. You got to listen to me. Talk about me, 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 me. So this is a common accusation of why they say or try to claim that I'm a narcissist, because I talk too much on the internet and I talk at length, and they don't like that because their minds can only concentrate for so long, and then they get uncomfortable with the fact that they can't deal with the size of the concept, and they start belittling themselves rather than trying to exercise that grey matter muscle and learn to be able to lift more weight with their cognitive muscle. Instead, they run away from, oh, that thought's too long. I can't lift that much weight. I'm just little old me. I'll go back into my corner and be the dunce that they told me I was. Projection, externalization. They project onto me their own lack of self-confidence. They don't think they're capable of it, so they get frustrated and impatient with the fact that I talk at length. I will introduce multiple concepts and bits of information into a one little sort of diatribe, and they're like, I'm losing track, Cookie. You're mentioning this and this and this and this, and I can't cope. Oh, you talk too much. You're a narcissist. You just like talking. I'll keep moving, sorry. But yeah, that again is sort of like, reinforcing the authority because they want to make you think, belittling or looking down on people as they perceive as inferior. I do have a habit of talking to people who project that kind of shit at me as if they're children. Because if you've got a family or in your extended family, or people, parents who've got children, when children are young, they exhibit a lot of the traits that are attributed to the definition of narcissism. It's not because children are narcissistic in that unhealthy mental psychological sense. It's just because as children, we're learning about the reality we're in, which includes other people, the social groups we're in, and we learn empathy and compassion as we are growing. So when you're first starting developing your psychology and starting to explore the world around you, and you're using the language as part of that to an outsider, in other words, or another person looking at what you're doing, it seems narcissistic because children are convinced that the world spins around them. Not every child, it's true in general. So when people start projecting that kind of shit at me or trying to do a reflection or reversal tactic on me, then yes, I talk to them as if they're children, because as far as I'm concerned, that's the psychology that they are demonstrating to me. So if they're going to be psychologically like children, then I have to talk to them as if they're children, because that's how I would talk with a child, not lambasting them, not chastising the child, because the child is a child, and as I just explained, they don't get the narcissistic thing is just a process that they're going through. It's not a mental fault or problem. But you talk to children differently than you talk to adults. So if an adult projects a childish mentality at me, I will talk to them with disdain, because they should learn better. They should grow. They should take benefit of all the amazing learning possibilities that are out there for them, and stop projecting their own shit onto others. And that learning process includes learning about yourself. Know thyself. And that is the introspection, the shadow work, the dealing with your own inner demon, as I mentioned right at the start when I played that little video clip from all the way back in 2014. So if you project your inner shadow onto me, you straw man me by accusing me of doing things that you yourself are doing, and then you try to play victim when I come down on you like a ton of bricks. Fuck you, you twat. Maybe the slap in your cerebellum will help you start to actually see the fault in your own projection and externalization. Sorry, ranting, but I'll probably end up ranting a lot on this, and I'm probably going to end up pissing some people off, but it's tough. This is the way it is. This is the reality of it. They like to try to keep accusing me or implying fault at me. Straw man, straw man, straw man. But there's nothing to it. If you ask them for any proof, not out of context, you ask them to give you proof in context, they ain't got nothing. Expect special favors and unquestioning compliance with their expectations. Well, and expect special favors. You know, you got the nice little authority hierarchy word in there. Special favors. You don't deserve special favors. They're only for the special people. Favors in and of itself, by definition, as well, is like, that's the same kind of thing, isn't it? You know, it's like something being given for nothing. I'm doing you a favor. It's got that undertone of, you know, you expect some kind of reciprocation, as in somebody returning the favor, but you know, it's still something that's sort of like being given to you as a special gift. Unquestioning compliance with their expectations. Yeah, I'd put that up with the believe they are superior. I could see that one in the definition of narcissism, which is basically just like ultimate selfishness. Yeah, believe they are superior and have unquestioning and require unquestioning compliance with their expectations. Sounds like most leaders, doesn't it? Sounds like most politicians. That's what they expect. When the monarchs who talk about, you know, the right to rule and all that kind of shit because they believe they are superior, and all their subjects have to jump when they're told, as in unquestioning compliance with expectations. Okay, moving on. Take advantage of others to get what they want. I would have put that under sociopathy and psychopathy rather than just narcissism. But as I said, the two do sort of or are correlated. The two conditions, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, whatever. Oh, keeps going out. Have an inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. That's the lack of empathy and compassion, which is indicative of that kind of serial R complex lizard mind. The older part of the brain that is primarily concerned with, can I eat it? Can I fuck it? Do I need to kill it? Is it a threat? Yeah. Be envious of others and believe others envy them. That again requires a hierarchical structure where some are considered superior to others, and that superiority elicits favors of some kind, such that some will be envious of those favors being given to the special people, and therefore believe that they should have them as well. It also reinforces that you are little old me, you are the peon, you are the subservient that doesn't deserve any respect, or you know, you don't deserve the respect of others. So you should be envious of anyone that does have respect, anyone that is deemed or labeled to be superior. Behave in an arrogant or haughty manner, coming across as conceited, boastful, and pretentious. That is, again, classically, that's part of what is commonly implied about me. The usual straw man of, oh, Cookie's just a pretentious twat. He thinks he's clever. So I think I'm clever because I talk about concepts that you have difficulty dealing with, but I'll quite happily talk about them. So who's the dumb one? Who's the clever one? And you think it's pretentious to have any self-confidence in my own abilities. Right, okay. So you want me to be little, small, incapable, not allowed, unspecial, but behave in an arrogant or haughty manner. What's the difference between haughty and happy? Yeah. Arrogant, fair enough, yeah. Arrogant is basically a demonstration of ignorance of others, which is an expectation of unquestioning compliance and belief because of a belief of superiority. That's where arrogance comes from, which again point at whichever leader or deluded person that thinks they're in charge of shit. Yeah, believe they are superior with an unquestioning compliance to their expectations, and that breeds arrogance. But haughty, isn't that somebody who just knows themselves quite well? So when some deluded wearer of a uniform shouts something at them and has an unquestioning questioning of unquestioning compliance, an expectation of unquestioning compliance, and the person being shouted at, who knows himself, turns around and goes, nah, mate, nah, 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 nah. That would be considered haughty. In other words, a defiance of the illusion of authority. Yeah. Coming across as conceited, again, that can be difficult because what is considered conceited, and how does that fit into the social structure between people? And is it truly conceit, or is it just, again, somebody who feels confident in themselves and said, no, fuck you, mate, you're talking shit? Boastful, definitely put that into definition of narcissism, because that's just, again, a belief in something that isn't real. Self-aggrandizement is another way of saying it. It's like people who walk around saying, oh yeah, I donate to charity every day, me, I'm so fucking great, I'm fucking moral, I give money to people all the time. Look at me giving, here's me giving money now, look, I'm giving money, that shows how great I am, isn't it? That is boastful, and that is pretentious. Insist on having the best of everything. That's a bit. I can see if it's sort of like insist to an extreme, as in they'll have some kind of outburst or episode, or they'll find it difficult to just exist in life if they don't have the best of everything, the best car or office. That is that kind of, greed is good, selfishness attitude. A lot of these definitions are a little bit ambiguous, and they are, please remember that this is given as a general guidance of symptoms of diagnosis for the condition that's defined as narcissism in the DSM. And you can't just apply these to everybody and go, oh, yeah, tick, 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 tick. Yeah, it fits all those bubbles, therefore it is at this. Because this would be a process of analysis with a trained mental health worker who's got training and experience of dealing with people who have disorders or mental problems of one kind or another, and they would work their way through these questions and the psychoanalysis process. I'm not necessarily suggesting Freudian, but just that process of analysis. The mental health worker will be asking them questions about their life, their experiences, the people they live with, the people they interact with, their expectations of the world, their dreams, their hopes, their fears. It's not just a matter of going, oh, I heard him say this once, tick, tick, narcissist, tick, Oh, he talks for an hour on the internet, chick, narcissist. It's a bit like that. Illuminati confirmed. He's got a triangle on his channel. Oh, Illuminati confirmed. It's like auto shilling. Just a few more, just to sort of add into this. People with narcissistic personality disorder have trouble handling anything they perceive as criticism, and they can become impatient or angry when they don't receive special treatment. I know a lot of people that do that. That seems to be basically a lot of modern society does that. Everybody always wants everything now, 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 me, now, 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 me. I wonder who encouraged them into that mentality. Who amplified that mentality? Who gave them a technology where they're looking at their own face on a screen every time they want to open the device up to be used for something? They're going to show their face to the screen. They're looking at their own face on the screen all the time. And they're encouraged, they're socially engineered and peer pressured into participating in this self-aggrandizement psychology where they go online and post a selfie of themselves. Here's me at the Grand Canyon. Here's me eating cheese. What? And then they become impatient or angry when they don't receive special treatment because they've been constantly told by the system that they deserve special treatment because they're special. Okay. Have significant interpersonal problems and easily feel slighted. Uh, easily feel slighted. I think the easiest way I can sort of reply to that is just with a sort of question, a very short, almost just statement of righteous anger. If somebody does some kind of injustice to you, do you not have the right to be slighted because you have just been slighted? So are you not allowed to react to being abused? This is indicative of a GIMP mentality that the system wants most people to be in. You can't react when the system abuses you. In that Orwellian description of a boot stomping on a face, you've got to be smiling when that boot's being stomped on your face. You've got to be saying, "Thank you very much, master. Please can I have another one, master?" You're not allowed to feel slighted at being injured by somebody or some bullshit within the bureaucracy. Significant interpersonal problem. That again, it's the social media generation, the millennial generation have a lot of interpersonal problems. We act with rage or contempt and try to belittle the other person to make themselves appear superior. I'll come back to these because near enough all of these so far, those last three are things that have often been thrown in my direction. Have difficulty regulating emotions and behavior. That could be applied to any psychological problem, couldn't it? So I think that's just a bit of a general one, not necessarily specific or particular to the definition of narcissism. Experience major problems dealing with stress and adapting to change. I'd say same as above, applies to almost all psychological problems. Feel depressed and moody because they fall short of perfection. I think that's a completely separate thing to narcissism. That's that kind of what do they call it? One of the modern sort of phrases, analysis paralysis. Seeking perfection and procrastination. Stopping yourself from doing something because you're so afraid of not achieving perfection that you don't bother trying in the first place. That kind of thing. So feeling depressed and moody because they fall short of perfection. That's almost like a kind of a narcissistic self-realization. The narcissist realizing that they're not perfect and they feel depressed because they're not perfect. That's contradictory to the definition of narcissism, because the narcissist believes they are perfect. They are absolutely the perfection. They're great at everything. They know everything. Everybody else is wrong. Have secret feelings of insecurity, shame, vulnerability, and humiliation. Again, common to a lot of different psychological problems, not just narcissism. I'm sorry, I haven't looked back at the chat for ages. I've been ranting away. Um, Apologies to everybody in the chat. Hopefully, you're keeping going, and maybe I've not, burnt anyone out yet. But I've still got some more. Let me carry on with what I was looking at on that page while I've still got it up. Yeah. Again, these points. Oh, get the highlight to work. These 3 points certainly have been thrown at me quite a few times. Becomes impatient or angry when they don't receive special treatment. One of the problems of this medium is that unless the content creator deliberately outputs the entirety of their lives, and while doing so gives a constant stream of consciousness narration, so that the viewer knows not only what they're doing in physical time space, but what they're thinking in their heads, then the viewer cannot know the complete the whole story of that content creator. You can't have an absolute knowledge of their motivations, their intention, their drives, their hopes, dreams, fears, etc. As I mentioned earlier about the symptoms are something that would be worked through by a medical practitioner who was analyzing somebody during a discussion about that person's life, etc. So it would not just be a, does he say this? Yes, tick. Does he say this? Yes, tick. And I'm not the kind of content creator that puts everything about my life online. I do. I know it could be viewed as being vlogs. Some of the stuff that I do, like this, really is sort of like a vlog, a video log. But I don't vlog everything about my life. And I have no intention to do so. Which for those who may have been around for a while and listened to me talk over the years, or maybe not that long even, hopefully you've already got the impression from the way I talk about this stuff that I don't want to do that. I don't want to put everything about myself on the internet, because I think privacy is something quite vital to us as beings. And certainly in terms of this use of this modern technology, as far as I'm concerned, it should be a tool. It is not life. It is not reality. It is a tool that it can be very beneficial for us in different ways. But people who put everything about themselves into this virtual space, it's like they're trying to get inside that virtual space. And I know, I said, if you've been listening for a while, you know that I've talked about that kind of stuff a lot. The system wants people in that kind of mentality. So again, even more so, I'm not going to tell you about everything I'm doing every minute of the day. And I'm certainly not going to tell you everything about my life and a lot of the shit that I've been through, that if I went to see a mental health practitioner, analyst, and worked through this process of diagnosis, they would not label me a narcissist. I'm sorry if that upsets some of the people out there who don't like the way I talk about shit. Well, tough fucking shit. I know you're so desperate to label me with some kind of label of mental illness. And in particular, there's a few characters that really, really want to be able to put a label of mental illness on me. Why is that? Because that's part of the methodology of character assassination, to disrupt the flow of information and try to claim that it's untrue. So, become impatient or angry when they don't receive special treatment. I don't expect special treatment, but I do have a self-confidence in my abilities and my achievements. If you don't think each of these episodes, well, I said these episodes, the episodes are due on a Monday night normally. If you don't think the content that I create and put out onto this medium are not achievements, then you're stuck in a very self-destructive mindset that the system has given to you, and you are trying to project that onto me. Unless, of course, you're driven by an ulterior motive, an agenda, or a paycheck, and you're doing it deliberately as a methodology to try and attack me. But if you don't think what I do is an achievement, then fuck off somewhere else and do your own thing. I don't expect special treatment, but I do expect acknowledgement in some manner of what I'm doing. And the majority of the time, that acknowledgement is just the fact that I know people tune in and watch, people chat in the chat room. That is enough acknowledgement for me. I don't need special treatment. Yeah, impatient or angry when they don't receive special treatment. No, I get impatient and angry when people tell me that I'm worthless, that what I do is meaningless, that what I do is just, oh, crazy talk, oh, you're just scaring people. So, no, you're obviously the one that's scared. When you say that to me, you just reveal that you are a frightened little person because of what has been put into your head. If you can't make your way through that requirement of concentration that lasts more than 30 seconds, such that you can listen to the entirety of an episode and see how in nearly every single episode I ever put out, it goes from, hey folks, look at all this fear that they're putting out there at the moment. Let's talk about how that fear is generated, how it manipulates people psychologically, and we'll strip it apart and we'll show you that actually you don't actually have anything to be afraid of. And if you really work on yourself and do that shadow work and get to know yourself, you'll even more so not have to worry about that fear. So, in other words, I'm doing completely the opposite of what I'm being accused of doing. Reversal, reflection, you see how their methodology works? They accuse you of doing exactly what they themselves are doing. So, yeah, I get impatient and angry with that shit. Have significant interpersonal problems and easily feel slighted. Well, I sort of, mentioned about the thing about slighted and righteous indignation. But there are real victims in the world. It's another element that I think I did put in my notes. Check my notes, see how far I've got. Bias and projection and externalization, reflection reversal. Yeah. Victimhood. This is another one that sort of goes along with the narcissism, the popularity of the narcissistic personality disorder. And I said it earlier, I'm not denying that there is a lot of truth to the reality that quite a large chunk of the population is obsessed with themselves because the system has been pushing them that way. And then they give them this narcissistic personality disorder meme and encourage them to all start self-policing and to attack each other because they see each other as being narcissists, because they're feeling upset that somebody is abusing them online. Significant interpersonal problems. Significant means, yeah, significant. It's not just, I don't like that guy, he's a twat. I don't think I'll bother interacting with him anymore because he's just constantly just trying to aggravate people. He's not really saying anything. He's just farting out mental flatulence all the time. I won't bother interacting with him anymore then. And then he comes along and he farts in my direction again. So I drop a ton of bricks on him and tell him to fuck off. Oh, you're a narcissist because you got upset. You got upset. You got angry at me. You got angry. Yeah, because you're being a twat. You think you can go around abusing people and there's no retribution. There's no comeuppance. There's no culpability for what you're doing. Where'd you get that idea from? Is it a system that encourages you to just look at yourself on a screen and think you're so special even though you don't do fuck all? Maybe. Am I being condescending? Yes. React with rage or contempt and try to belittle the other person to make themselves appear superior. Condescending, yes. That's one of the traits I will give them. Without me talking about going into a lot of the stuff about my life and life experiences of why I have certain traits that do fit, will react with rage and contempt when people make themselves, do this kind of shit to me. Yeah. I know sometimes it comes across as if I'm trying to make myself appear superior. I'm not. I'm just talking down to somebody because, as far as I'm concerned, they are exhibiting childish behavior and attitudes. And being as tall as I am, when I talk to children, it's always down to. No, it's just a bit silly, but I treat them that way because, as far as I'm concerned, they're demonstrating idiocy and a lack of self sovereignty. They don't know themselves. They're just repeating and parroting shit that's been put in their head by the system to belittle themselves. So they're the ones that view themselves as little old me. What was the other point? Monopolizing conversations. Yeah, I do have a lot to say. Can't think which other one. Maybe the haughty manner. I think the main thing is about the victimhood part of it. As I was going to say, it's another meme that's been popularized in recent, certainly social media culture. Is this idea that, either everyone's a victim and you get this kind of victimhood personality, which, oh, poor me, everything's picking at me, everybody's out to get me, infamy, they've all got it in for me. Maybe the older people out there get that reference, or you've got the opposite, where it's like the left-right Hegelian dialectic game again. You've got the opposite dichotomy of people who go around giving out this attitude of there are no victims, it's all your own fault. You did it to yourself. You obviously got that other person's leg and lay down on the floor and stamped that foot onto your own head, didn't you? Yeah, because there's no victims ever. No victims don't exist. No, it's just an illusion. It's a conspiracy that there's victims. Again, it's the system deliberately manipulating the thinking processes of the population to push them into camps so that they fight each other. And one says, no, I am a victim. The other one says, no, there are no victims. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but there are a lot of victims in the world. And they're victims of various things. Yeah, from all scales, all walks of life and all scales of levels of abuse and damage caused to them. So there are victims. Being a victim is a reality. But that doesn't deny from the fact that there are some people who feel that they need to use it like a shield, like a cloak, to claim victimhood when nothing has been done to them at all. And of course, you got the obvious sidelines of scammers and con artists who'll go online and say, oh, I've been diagnosed as having leukemia, send me money so I can get a treatment. And then turns out there's nothing wrong with them. Or they go online and say, oh, I got burgled, all my stuff was stolen, and it's just before Christmas. I need to buy more toys for the kids for Christmas. Please send me money. Yeah, there's various ways that can be manipulated, but the point is the system likes to use those processes of creating the two sides, the opposition. But the unfortunate reality is there are victims, and often the victims get drowned out because of this dichotomy argumentation that takes place in certainly the social media environment, with the internet as a whole, really. And again, it's gone out. Damn you. But the reason I'm mentioning that is I react with anger when people attack me. For those that claim that I'm doing something to attack them, but again, like I mentioned earlier, please ask them for in context references for when they claim I've attacked them. And every time, I guarantee you, all I ever do is defend myself. I stand up for myself. Because in my life experience, that's what I've learned to do. Yeah, so they claim, they try to throw at me that straw man of, oh, you're just being a victim, Cookie. You're whinging and whining and raging because you claim somebody attacked you. It's like, no, you couldn't. You did attack me. You're posting shit comments about me. And then when I come back at you and go, hey, fuck it, that's shit, mate. You go, oh, you look at you, the victim. Reversal, reflection. And I know for some particular character out there, the only reason he's doing it is because he wants people to react. He wants me to react. He's trying to get a rise. He wants people to shout at him because he does this thing online where basically he puts that stuff up, he puts that kind of content out online and he tries to make a buck out of it. It's like bum fights on the internet. Yeah, he tries to get people riled up. He'll come into a chat room and post shit comments. He'll disagree with everyone, even if you say the sky is blue. He'll go, no, it's fucking not. No, it's not. No, it's not. You're crazy. You're insane. Because he wants to get a rise out of you that he can then try and profit out of. And I know this for a fact because I've heard it multiple times. He's even stated directly in one way that he wanted to be banned. So I banned him. I gave him exactly what he wanted. He got blocked for a few weeks. Then I unblocked him again. Yeah, but in that statement of, I want them to ban me, he clearly indicated that he had no intention of dealing with the information or the communication that happens in this environment. All he wanted to do was to think that he was proving some kind of point, self-delusion, that he was proving some kind of point by getting himself banned. So he set out to get banned. So from that point on, whatever he was posting was about making somebody ban him in the chat room. Was he learning anything other than how to wind people up? You know, is that really a skill you want? Yeah. How helpful is that in the long-term projection of reality? Hang on, let me take that screen share off for now. Go back to my notes. Projection, externalization. I said that in that little video clip right at the start. For a lot of people that do that kind of trolling behavior, they may not be consciously aware of it, but sometimes what they're doing is projecting onto somebody else their own inner problems, their own inner fears, inner shadow, etc. They can't do it for themselves through introspection. So instead, they see it in others and then they attack that other for the thing that they dislike about themselves. That as well can be manipulated by the system. Because when you point at those who think they're in control and say, look at what they're doing, is that not the definition of psychopathy? Then the system can look at you and go, oh, well, you must be projecting that onto them, which means you're the psychopath. Oh, yeah, you're the psychopath. And it just becomes ridiculous. You know, the system has had a lot of time to create some of these methods and to perfect how they go about them. So, what was I going to say? Yeah, I'm not going to put online everything about my life and my life experiences that could help explain why I react sometimes in the way I do. But if you're one of those people out there and you think that I'm just going to sit here and let you post shit on what is in effect my virtual front door, you're a moron. And I'll treat you like a moron because you're acting like one, unless you're doing it for some kind of agenda or other motivating factor. And that's when we get into the stuff to do with the control system, using methods of trolling to influence what's going on in this environment. Gaslighting, denial of reality. You see this shit happening in the world and you look at it and you talk about it and you say to people around you, like, isn't that so and so? Isn't that like psychopathy? What they're doing, they're acting like psychopaths. And the system will go, no, that didn't happen. No, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. You didn't see that. You didn't see that. That's gaslighting, denial of reality. Somebody posts shitty comments under my videos or into a chat room or whatever, and I'll say, hey, look, somebody's attacking me. It's the easiest, most accurate way of saying it. He's attacking me. No, didn't happen. You're just imagining. You're just being a victim. You're just whinging because people are criticizing you and you can't take criticism. Look up the definition of criticism, for fuck's sake. No. Denial of reality, gaslighting. If you go back through all of my stuff, even if, because I know there'll be some obsessive people out there that have got stuff recorded from my channel, from a long time ago or whatever, and they think that's somehow indicative of what I'm doing at the moment. I went through a very rapid learning curve, you could say. Maybe not so rapid because it took probably about 1.5 to 2 years. But when I first started on this internet environment was in 2010, when I started making content that I put out there for public consumption. Was in 2010. And I spent approximately 1.5 to 2 years realizing and being through that process of, like, through the paddling of the swollen ass of seeing the way this system tries to indoctrinate you into the chosen cadre of the so-called alternative media, the chosen select circus that is allowed to be doing this kind of thing, and what you can and can't say and talk about and shit like that, and who you can and can't associate with, etc. And it was a learning curve. And I experienced a few things that made me go, fuck it, I accept my naivety that when I first started doing this, I approached it from an old school attitude. Remember, like I mentioned earlier, I started on the internet since near enough it was going. I had an old school attitude where I'd developed from the mid-90s through to the noughties, the late noughties, being in environments of online forum chat rooms. They're called chat rooms, but they weren't live chat like we have now at the side of the video. They were forum posting platforms. You post a comment, somebody else comments in relation to your comment, and on it goes in a long thread, a blog thread. And I'd been in environments where, you'd encounter trolls. There'd be what used to be called flame wars. People just posting hate at each other, one after the other, and you'd count how many flames it would take before Hitler got mentioned. It was an average of 7 to 8 posts, and then somebody would accuse the other one of being Hitler. I was used to that kind of environment. And even though at the time I had a certain amount of comprehension of the way the visual media, modern media, was being used to manipulate people, program people, etc., when I started getting involved in this environment, I was approaching it from a point of view where I was sort of on what was supposed to be the alternative side of things. So I had a naive expectation that most of the people I encountered would be genuine and interested in the subject matter and have some genuine knowledge on the subject matter. But what I actually encountered is the majority of people were disingenuous. There was so much manipulation, so much interference, and deliberate counterintelligence manipulation. We'll get to that in a minute. It took me back. Basically, it took me back. I had to take a step back and go, "Fucking hell!" There's more like deliberate manipulation in this environment that I was expecting, and I certainly wasn't when I first started. I was doing stuff still within that naivety of, oh yeah, everybody's here for the same reasons. We all, genuinely want to try to help people and put good info out. Well, no, that's not what it's like in this environment. Yeah, and then I started to get to know other people that over the years have proved to be genuine and actually really interested in trying to put out content that helps people. And I encountered people like Jeff, you've seen him in the chat, and Peter, who does a reality chat on the Wednesday night, and we've been interacting with each other for the past 10 plus years now. So I've got to know some people online. I know they're genuine. I know they're coming from a good place. Steve Tagoose does the mystery show on the Thursday night. We don't all, we don't absolutely agree on every single point of every concept and whatever. But I agree with him on the majority. I think we're pretty much on the same page with just a few slight, little difference here and there in the sentence structure, but really we're on the same page. I know he's coming from a good place. Things like that take time to build up. And there is a lot of expectation that is projected from the audience onto the content creators that is legacy from the old paradigm system of when people looked at their television, the talking head reading the news on the BBC would be the authority figure that they just believed without question or with very little question, for the majority of the population anyway. We are entrained with that expectation through the education system and the structures that are built into society, like where it was in that description of what is a narcissist, things like, are you a special person? Do you have the little badge? Have you been given the badge that says you're a special person? Did you get the certificate to say you have officially achieved something? That kind of bullshit. But people have been transitioned into this environment, and in this environment, the manipulation is nth degree worse than it ever was in the old style media, in television and print media. I can't remember if it was the CIA or the FBI, but those inquiries that happened in America in the 60s when they admitted that they had people working in every newspaper, in every TV station. There was one of their agents who would monitor the flow of information, and he'd be the one like Winston in 1984 who said, yeah, that story's been cancelled. You're not allowed to talk about that one. Or this one just needs these words changing, and yeah, chocolate ration's gone up again. So that was 5 decades ago. So what do you think it's like now? Now that they have the technology where at the click of a button, they can create a new sock account. That one I showed was a blank sock account, which may be indicative that it was created by, let's call them an amateur, somebody who's just pissed off at me for some reason. So they just, oh yeah, I'll make up a sock account so I can post some shit at him. Whereas the reality is, if they're the agency have software available to them and the technology infrastructure available to them, that they can make sock accounts that have a complete internet history, a complete internet footprint. So when you go and look at their page, there will be a stream of stuff on the page. You think, oh yeah, this is a genuine page. Yeah, look, he's got posted this, and he's got favorites there, and he's got playlists there, and they can auto create that account on multiple platforms. You can do this with a click of a button. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, need a new account for today's work. When Brigade 77 infantry guy sits down at his desk in front of his computer terminal, he goes, "Yeah, today I'll be using this account and this account and this account and this account and this account." And he'll have a little folder of different accounts that will be geared towards different methodologies or different character traits that are meant to have connection with people and things like that. One of the main things they play on, or one of the things they use to try and manipulate people. It was in the one other article, which I can't be asked pulling up now because my ranting about the diagnosis one, I think, was enough. The other one was looking at it from the point of view of, are you in a relationship with a narcissist? Because I thought I could use that to talk about how the system itself is narcissistic. So therefore, our relation as citizens or subjects to that system is a relationship with a narcissist. Yeah? But part of what they talk about in there is one of the ways you can recognize a narcissist is if, when they come into your life, they saturate you with praise to begin with. They do what's called love bombing. And I've experienced this a lot. People turn up in the chat that I've never met before, never heard of before. They're a brand new name in the chat. And they're like, "Oh, Cookie, you're so great. You're fantastic. I love everything you say. It's like we're on the same wavelength, man. Oh yeah, I agree, I agree, I agree. You're great, you're great, you're great, you're great." This is polishing the ego. Yeah. And polishing your knob. They're polishing your ego because they think that's a way to get in your good books. They think that's a foot in the door, like the salesman who comes to your door. Yeah, I like the look of your hallway there, madam. That's lovely wallpaper. You've done the decorating really nice. You're so clever at interior decorating. Oh yeah, and your dress looks great today, I must say. Yeah? Do you want to buy this shit? It's a box of shit, but I'll sell it to you for tuppence. Yeah? They begin by ingratiating themselves, by love bombing, by telling you that they think you're fantastic. But that's all about trying to gain your trust. Because from gaining that trust, they then move on to try and insert themselves into what they call the back channels. Some of the terminology I'm going to use might not be 100% accurate to what they themselves use because I've never been in that environment. I've never worked in that environment. I've never seen all of their documentation. So I can't be 100% accurate. And they might be sitting there having a little bit of a giggle. I was calling it back channels, Mrs. Back channels, because it's not that in their terminology. In their instruction manual is probably called something else. But there's some of the terms I'll use I've picked up along the way as I've looked at various documentation that proves that this shit happens. And you have to be ridiculously naive to have any kind of expectation or claim that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. Anybody that claims it doesn't happen at all is more than likely working for them or is genuinely mentally retarded. The extent of how much it occurs is debatable. And I would agree that it can be disempowering to give people the impression that it's happening constantly all the time to everyone, because that's not exactly accurate. And it gives people this idea that there's somebody, an individual, lurking over them constantly, looking at everything they're typing. It doesn't work that way. The reality now is that, yes, all our internet and mobile tech device communications and interactions are monitored, but the level of monitoring and the actual direct personal involvement of some agent or trooper within the Brigade 77 is debatable. They don't necessarily need to have an individual monitoring you personally constantly. A lot of it is done by the automated systems, by the algorithms, etc. So where did I get to? Gaslighting, mentioned that. Yeah, soccer accounts, love bombing. Mention this as well because I put this in my notes just because it come up in some of the chat from Monday night, and I was like, well, why are you even mentioning that? Because I've only ever done that, well, twice in total. and once in recent memory, and that's asking for donations. I talk a lot about how money is used to manipulate people, manipulate the public en masse, and also to try and elicit the worst from people by, in effect, bribing them with the promise of money and stuff like that. And I do not disagree with the core principle, the principle of capitalism. If you go and look at what the word means and the definition of the principle of capitalism, I don't disagree with that, because all capitalism means in its definition is an exchange. And we all do that all the time. Capitalism is more defined by a benefit gained through the process of an exchange. And hopefully, what we're doing right now is an exchange that some of the people listening will benefit from in some way. I know I will benefit from, because I'm benefiting from having the opportunity to vent a little bit and at the same time, hopefully, include some information and some ideas that will help people see through a lot of this manipulation and bullshit. That's capitalism. Capitalism doesn't mean pound notes, doesn't mean money, doesn't mean the financial system of things like Wall Street and the money magic of commodity manipulation. That's a modern concept that doesn't directly relate to the definition, the pure definition of the principle of capitalism. And a lot of people struggle with that because they can't expand their thinking big enough to get why it is that, hang on, so we can say he agrees with capitalism, but he doesn't like money. How does that work? And yeah, I'm being condescending because that's the kind of shit they throw at me. So you're being hypocritical. You asked for donations and yet you talk bad about money. And I was reading the comment. I was thinking, mate, I've done that in recent times. I've done it once. I did it years ago, near enough right back to the start of when I was doing this shit. And I was tempted with the idea of having a donate button and trying to earn a living by doing this thing. But the more I thought about it and the more I worked my way through that learning curve of just how fucking manipulated this environment is, the more I felt I needed to stick with the principle that if you do it for money, it can, not always necessarily, not always guaranteed, but it can create a bias. Because at some point, your life becomes influenced, your content becomes influenced by your need to generate money so that you can pay your bills, buy your food, etc. So at some point, you start to self-police or to adjust your own content because your primary concern is generating money, not actually talking about the concepts, the content, the ideas, the information, etc. So this sort of suggestion that, oh, you shit talking money, but you ask for donations. So at the end of 2018, December 2018 and January 2019, the wonderful bureaucracy here in the UK decided to fuck over my benefit claims, because that's what they do these days now. That's the way it works now, unfortunately. They fuck it up. They make you start all over again. They make you go, if you're making any kind of claim based on health problems, then you have to go through an assessment, or you have to fill out the assessment form and they come and visit you, either or. And they make an assessment. And the way it's been working for the past few years is that 80 to 90% of people automatically fail that assessment. This is government sanctioned methodology to try and push people off the benefit system, but also it is eugenic population control, because they know that some people, for various reasons, either psychological or physical health reasons, will not survive the process. So they will be killed off. And this is factually provable by the sheer numbers of deaths of people who have died after being refused their benefits or denied their assessment. They've been failed on their assessment and they die not long after, or they commit suicide not long after. They stopped reporting the total numbers a few years ago because it got into the tens of thousands. So it was worse than the current plague that is supposedly so dangerous that everyone's locking themselves in a fucking cupboard. But where were all you fucking fear victims when people were being killed off en masse by the benefit system? So they deliberately fucked up my benefits. I had to go through that whole assessment process bullshit again. They automatically failed me. I made an appeal. You have to wait for the appeal to be processed and come back through. Then, after the appeal was processed and I won the appeal, because that's the way it works now, the third party private company that the government employs to do that first assessment, they have been deliberately chosen and tasked to deny 80 to 90% of claimants straight off the bat. They don't give a fuck how ill you are. They'll just go, yeah, fail, 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 because they know full well that the appeal process will pass it. If you're genuine and you have problems and you're entitled to make those claims, then you will win your appeal. And that's the way it generally goes for most of the population in that situation. They fail you, you make an appeal and you win straight off. No question. Near enough, apart from you go fill out the forms and send them off and whatever, but pretty much guaranteed everybody wins their appeal. But in that time gap, I used up all my savings that I had. So I'd gone right down almost to zero. I did not have enough money left to pay the rent in January 2019. I had about half enough money basically for the month. So I had to ask for some donation. I had to ask for some help because I was still waiting for that appeal process to go through and all the shit to be changed over and whatever, because they forced me to go on universal credit. So yeah, I asked for donations once, but that is now being used as some kind of method to attack me and claim that somehow I'm doing something naughty or bad, or I'm being disingenuous with the public because I don't put all the details of my life out into the public, because it's none of your fucking business. Deal with the information, not the person. Deal with the message, not the messenger. Would it matter how I make my money? What about all the other channels that talk absolute shit, that do nothing but attack other people online, other YouTube channels, and they make their money by asking you for donations constantly, and you're happy to give it over because they entertained you for a couple of hours by taking the piss out of the crazy people on the internet? What kind of fucked up mentality have you got? That's like paying to go to the Circus Maximus and watch the Christians getting eaten by the lions. You'd be there, wouldn't you? Lark's tongue, ocelot's nose, badger's ears. Oh yeah, give us more of them. So yeah, asking for donations I have done once. I'm not saying it will never happen again, because I don't know how my life situation might change in the future. Somebody in some of their comments recently under my videos was trying to imply again, they're trying to project that kind of straw man fallacious argument against me again of like, well, you're on benefits, yeah, and I paid into the system, mate. I want that money back. You don't give a fuck about the royals stealing how much money off you. You don't give a fuck about the politicians raping the taxpayer's purse, but you want to have a bitch at somebody online who's claiming benefits because they worked and paid into the system, and now they're asking for what they're entitled to in the first place according to that very own system. You're really desperate to try and create some kind of fault on my part so that you can then attack that fault. That's called a straw man fallacy, mate. Please go and learn about uh, logical fallacies. Go and learn some philosophy. You think I'm not going to get angry at you again? You think you can abuse people and there is no retribution? There is no fight back. You're going to throw a punch at somebody, but they've just got to stand there and take it and not try and hit you back. What fucking planet do you live on? So, yeah, the donation thing gets thrown around a lot of people. If you actually listen in context, when I talk about things like the money and stuff like that, I make a point to say that I've got nothing against people earning a living by creating good content. Yeah, if they're putting effort in. It takes a lot of effort to do this shit, folks. It's not just fucking. It's not like sweeping the floor. You think it's people think it's easy because they've been trained into this concept by the system that everybody can be famous for 15 minutes as long as they got their mobile device and they do their selfie culture thing and they play their narcissistic little role of going, everybody look at me eating cheese. I'm eating cheese. See how easy it is to make money on the internet, just videos of me eating cheese. That's not what I do. I talk about a lot of information. I bring together a lot of different subject matter from different disciplines of academia. I may not necessarily spoon feed you loads of information because I've learned that that doesn't really help people develop themselves very well. It just reinforces the reliance on an outside authority figure, the guru, the sensei, the teacher, the politician telling you how your world will be. Whereas if you encourage people to learn for themselves, then they develop, they find, they realize true gnosis. So then you don't have to persuade them like a politician does using lies and manipulation and sophistry because they see it for themselves. They discover it for themselves. So when I talk about things like COINTELPRO and some of the documentation that you can find online, I'm not going to show you too much stuff, but this is just as a quick indicator of the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I'll show you the screen share for the Wikipedia, the Wikipedia page. And yeah, remember that caveat that Wikipedia is not the source of all truth and it's heavily manipulated. So you shouldn't just take it as carte blanche, absolute gospel. You should, you know, take it as just one information source with a bit of salt, pinch of salt, and you can look for other corroborating evidence to match up what's written here. But if you just go on Wikipedia and look in, type in for COINTELPRO and just have a little work through that, and you can see how, because a lot of the documents now have been made public, they've been declassified. So you can look at things like methods, infiltration, psychological warfare, harassment via the legal system, illegal force, undermine public opinion. That's character assassination. Yeah, that's the kind of shit I've been talking about primarily. You can go and look into that for yourself. Begin your own learning process. Find your way through that rabbit hole of information and resources and documentation so that you develop true gnosis that that kind of shit does actually happen. Your governments do that kind of shit to their own population. And that was, again, multiple decades ago that was happening. That was the 50s and 60s, I think, or 60s and 70s, sorry. That was happening decades ago. So what do you think it's like now in this new media environment where in the UK they have an entire military battalion dedicated to doing nothing but online interference activity, which is what COINTELPRO primarily does. But on that point of money, sorry, because I digressed into the COINTELPRO, on that point of money. I've got nothing against people generating an income for themselves by doing what they do. I only call it out when I see it as exploitation, because people are just putting out shit. Like, oh, look at me eating cheese. Look at me pointing and laughing at that guy over there in a wheelchair. They think that's content, and they charge you money for it, or they ask for donations for it, or they want to sell you a T-shirt, with some stupid slogan on it, and ask for money like 50 quid for a bog standard shitty T-shirt with a basic print on it. That's exploitation. And there's a lot of channels in this environment, in this sort of area, this corner of the internet, where we talk about subjects that are like conspiracy theories and the villainous nature of the governments and shit like that. There's a lot of people who come into this environment who target this area, this demographic, deliberately to exploit the fear factor. And you've had a lot of them out and about recently because of the current crisis situation. How many places have you seen peddling the dehydrated food in a bucket? Yeah, $200. You get food enough for 6 months in a plastic bucket, so you can shit in the bucket. You never have to leave your cupboard. You just live in that cupboard under the stairs for the next 6 months and never have to leave. Only 600 quid per bucket. Whoa, get it now. Be afraid. The end of the world's coming. That's exploitation. That's profiteering, marketeering, war profiteering. So yeah, I shout at shit like that. I shout at the way the financial system uses debt and claims that it's money. I shout at how the government is able to just magically summon money from seemingly out of nowhere. When there's a crisis, suddenly all these billions just start appearing. But you got health problems and you need to claim benefits because you can't get down your stairs without, nearly injuring yourself or whatever. No, fuck you. You can fuck off and die. What? So you want me to give moral validation to that? Because if I don't, then I'm being a hypocrite because I ask for donations and I claim benefits that I'm entitled to. I think you're a fucking psychopath. If not, you're a sociopath. But you're an entrained sociopath because it's the system that's put those ideas in your head and persuaded you that they're good and right and double plus good and you should enforce them onto everyone around you. You need help. Or you need to help yourself, certainly. Start from that point of view. Begin with yourself and work outwards. Get back to my notes. Yeah, so that was about the donations, and I sort of slightly jumped ahead a bit to COINTELPRO. But back-channel interference I've mentioned as well, where they love bomb you, they try to gain your trust, and then from that trust they try to insert themselves into your social group, or they try to involve themselves into your activity. That's why I wanted to reference the COINTELPRO. Because if you go and look into that information, that is primarily how they infiltrated the groups at the time, mainly the Black Panthers, but there was others as well. They infiltrated those groups so that then they could monitor them, gain information on the inside, but also disrupt them from the inside and deliberately misdirect them. A classic it's become somewhat cliched now because they've done it so much and it's gone on now for so many years that it's just become like a cliched norm. This is in the USA, where the FBI will actively create conspiracy plots and encourage people to carry out stupid activities and then arrest them at the moment they're about to like press the button. So they will actually encourage people to do destructive acts like build a bomb and blow up a shopping mall or some shit like that. They will provide the resources So not only the materials to build the device, but also instructions on how to build the device, instructions on where to place it to be most effective, as well as ideological manipulation to convince the subject, the victim, that they should do this thing, that they should go ahead and blow up other people and blah, 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 blah. And then when the person, the patsy, finally goes and does all this shit and turns up at the shopping mall, the FBI are there ready to pounce and they arrest them and they go, hey, look, public, look at how great we are. We caught another crazy person trying to commit terrorist acts. Oh, we're brilliant. We are. It's called fucking entrapment. And it's a methodology they've used for a long time. In recent years, it's become so inbuilt that it's an absolute cliche. It's a norm. And if you go back in history, you find other examples such as Gladio and COINTELPRO, the Weather Underground, the Unabomber, the anthrax posting after 9/11. Sorry, the great event of buildings going away. I give credit to Dr. Rock for that. It's a good way of saying it. The event of buildings going away. They do this kind of shit. And it's beyond naivety to turn around and say, oh, they wouldn't do that. Oh, there's no proof that they do shit. There's an absolute mountain of proof. It is undeniable. You can present this proof in court. It's been done multiple times in the past. People were prosecuted for the explosions in the Gladio project in Europe. I can't remember what train station it was, but when they blew up the train station, some of the people that perpetrated that were prosecuted for it later. Yeah, it might take years, but yeah, it ended up in some prosecution. But then that brings me a little bit more up to date. I did sort of mention the great event of buildings going away. I'll screen share this. I'll try and I'm getting near to the ending and concluding, folks. So thanks for bearing with me and listening to me rant and squeal and whinge and moan. I'm just a victim. I'm just a narcissist. But this is an extract from a paper written by Cass Sunstein about how to influence the narrative over the great event of buildings going away in the period several years after. This was after a little bit of time. You got to allow for bureaucratic logistical lag. Bureaucracies, especially massive bureaucracies, don't react overnight instantly. So by the time the event had happened in 2001, then you had the build-up of the questioning over the next few years and the development of an active truth movement. Although I shouldn't really do the bunny ears for that, because at the time, the 9/11 truth movement was an actual thing. Yeah, it was an organized thing that was occurring. So it was the truth movement. That term had been appropriated since. But anyway, partly, probably, most likely, appropriated by the methodologies and influence of what this guy is writing about in this little clip. So preliminary draft and all that, like done in 2008. So like I said, bureaucratic lag of time for him to get round to actually do it and put it together. But that makes it even more relevant to a lot of what's happened over the last several years here in this environment. Conspiracy theories. Kassar Sunstein and Adrian Yamul, abstract. I'm not going to read through all of it. I'll leave it on the screen long enough so that if you want to read through it fully, you can. Hopefully you can see it clearly enough and whatever. And I've shown this quite a few times. You can find the full paper online if you want to read the full paper. But I made this clip it years ago just because I found it was the easiest way to sort of demonstrate the information that was relevant, because it's mainly this paragraph that's relevant. So what can government do about conspiracy theories? Among the things it can do, what should it do? We can readily imagine a series of possible responses. Government might ban conspiracy theorizing. You've seen that building up in recent times on the internet, especially when it comes to the current situation. There are certain elements about the current situation, the infected crown, that you're not allowed to talk about at all. You will automatically get banned. So that is basically banning conspiracy theorizing. Government might impose some kind of tax, financial or otherwise, on those who disseminate such theories. You can also redefine the wording of that to fines. You will be fined if you talk about certain subjects, or you will be required to have a license to be allowed to talk about certain subjects. Think of the mainstream media, they have to have publishing licenses and whatever. 3, government might itself engage in counter speech, marshalling arguments to discredit conspiracy theories. Well, how do they go about discrediting them? They do that through processes that are described in the description of COINTELPRO. And I mentioned a few of them earlier, things like character assassination, strawman fallacies, ad hominem fallacies. Attack the messenger and discredit and excommunicate as a heretic the messenger, like they've been doing with many people at the moment. Government might formally hire part 4. Government might formally hire credible private parties to engage in counter speech. In other words, private third-party companies that are basically trolls online to fuck with anyone that is talking about things that the government has decided are conspiracy theories. But it won't be called trolling. It'll be called counter speech. It'll probably be called something else in each of the companies, like PR or something like that. Public relations. Yeah, I'll be given a fucking Bernays code book of what words to use. Number 5, government might engage in informal communications with such parties, encouraging them to help. Each instrument has a distinctive set of potential benefits, costs, blah, 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 blah. But the main point, and the one I always like to bring people back to, is this last sentence. However, our main policy idea is that government should engage in cognitive infiltration of the groups that produce conspiracy theories, which involves a mixture of points 3, 4, and 5. Right, point 3 is government itself engaging in counter speech. You can think of that as like Bojo giving his little speeches at the podium each day, or Dominic Raab, or whoever they choose to be the fall guy scapegoat for that day. Basically saying like, oh no, the people out there saying that it's this are wrong. It's actually this. That's the government itself engaging in counter speech. Part 4, government might formally hire credible third parties. And part 5, government might engage with communication with such parties, encouraging them to help. In other words, they're not being hired, they're just being encouraged to get involved as like an NGO or a charitable involvement, where it's basically when you get to the area of like the mind space document. That's one that I never thought to pull up, actually, would have been worthwhile. If you're in the UK, that certainly is relevant. If you don't know about that, just do an internet search for mindspace.pdf. That's MINDSPACE, mindspace.pdf. You'll find it eventually. It's sort of like a general guidance document on the use of cognitive behavioral manipulation, behavior modification, basically, on the UK public by governmental agencies. Yeah, it's a little bit generalized, so don't think it's like an instruction manual on how to hypnotize people and make women take their clothes off. It don't work like that. But you just need sun, nice weather, go outside and look at all the peaches. But before I digress too much, back to that point. Our main policy idea is the government should engage in cognitive infiltration. Think about the definitions of that. What does that mean? Cognitive means of the mind, of your cognition, of your thinking processes. infiltration, invading, getting inside, getting their foot in the door, slipping in unnoticed, like a spy sneaking in so that they can monitor and manipulate what's happening. Again, reference to COINTEL pro documentation and evidence. But in this respect, it's they don't just want to say, "Oh, you're not allowed to talk about that." In this, he's suggesting that they engage in methods that means you don't even think about this stuff. They actually change the way you think about it. So when you think of certain things, their influence will cause your thinking to spin off in a different direction. And part of how they do that is through methods like I've been ranting about earlier on, where I was pointing out how most of the comments and the shit flinging that is going on at the moment is based primarily on character assassination, implying guilt using straw man fallacies, and then attacking those two things. Primarily concentrate on those two things because they cannot deal with the information. They cannot deal with the arguments based on conceptions, on concepts such as philosophical principles. They know they can't because the academic world has been debating some of these arguments for thousands of years. So the government knows they can't refute them. So instead, they attack the personalities. And when it comes to more modern concepts and information, when you're talking about technology and behavioral manipulation via technology, use of symbols, colors, imagery, pictures, neurolinguistic programming, etc., then obviously there is some debate or to and fro, even amongst the so called experts and academics, about how the technology is or is not implemented. But there is a wealth of evidence to demonstrate, and as I pointed out, this document was originally released in 2008, preliminary draft 2008. So they've had 12 years since then to play with his ideas and implement them in the real world. And this is, again, based on an iceberg of other evidence hidden below the surface. As you go back in time, if you consider now to be the surface of the water and you're looking at this pile of evidence in front of you, think of the evidence that goes back in history of how they've done this kind of shit in the past and how their methodologies have been building and building and building into their technological ability to manipulate the way you think. They manipulate the way you think, they manipulate the actions you take, that manipulates the society that you end up building. Because we are the ones that build the society we share with each other. They come along and try and persuade us all that it only happens because they allow it and they say they want it to happen. No, we do it. We're the ones that actually do it. And yeah, I'm saying we because I'm participating in that. If you don't think doing stuff like this is not participating in society, then again, you're an idiot. You don't have to be putting bricks on top of each other to build society. Society is not just based on materialistic things. The language you use is a resource, it is a tool, it is part of what builds your society. So if they fuck with the language, that ripples upwards into the society that results on that language that is being used to exchange information on what society you all want to share with each other. To reclaim that power back to yourself. It doesn't mean I think I'm special like a narcissist. I think I need special treatment because I think I'm so clever and so wonderful and so brilliant and perfect. No, you fucking arrogant twat. You want the world to be a better place? Start with yourself, work outwards, and part of that process is the realization that none of this bullshit would be happening if people stopped going along with it. If you stopped putting those bricks one on top of the other, there wouldn't be the fucking Tower of Babylon. That tower only grew because people followed instructions and orders. And when the rulers said, keep piling up the bricks, we want the tower to be higher, everybody went, oh, okay, yeah, The king says we gotta keep putting bricks on top of each other, putting bricks on top. I better do what the king says. He's the one with the divine right to rule. I'm just using that as an example, and in a modern context, as yeah, it's more about governments and bureaucracies than it is about monarchies anymore in most places. But the principle still operates the same. And if you think this stuff is about fear, again, you're missing the point. You get rid of that fear by seeing the reality of what it is and how dark it's got now the sun's gone down, which is a good indication of how long I've been ranting. Nearly 3 hours. I think I better wind it up. Let me just check my notes, see if I've missed anything in particular I wanted to say. The usual sort of caveat that I've mentioned a few times recently: blocking people in this online environment, on my channel certainly. If you if you're doing shit like I've just been talking about, then I will block you, more than likely. You'll get a certain amount of time to spout your shit, but the more shit you spout, the more obvious it will become that you're just a shit fountain, and I'll block you because you're a shit fountain. If you've got a different point of view to me, if you've got a counter argument, if you've got different evidence, that's great. And I've said this so many times over the years. And yet, again, they still try to use that as a straw man argument against me and claim that I don't allow counter points of view. We're only allowed to agree with what Cookie says. Therefore, he's a narcissist, he's a cult leader, he's a guru, he's a this, he's a that. You fucking idiot. You more than likely end up going somewhere else if you don't get booted out because you struggle with the kind of stuff I'm talking about anyway. And that's not me bigging myself up like a narcissist. That's me being self confident in my own abilities and achievements. If you don't like it, maybe you should work on something about yourself so then you can feel a similar self confidence about what you're doing. Yeah. So I will block people if they do that kind of shit. It's not just because they have a different point of view. It's because they're trying to use manipulative bullshit, sophistry, disingenuine commentary to deliberately try and just throw shit at people or cause trouble or derail what's happening, to just smear it all in shit. Then no, you will get blocked. You'll get booted. And if you want to then go around the internet making troll videos about me and saying I'm a this, I'm a that, you go ahead. That's what you do. I do this. Yeah. And if you want to say I'm blocking your free speech, I'll be the cross for that nail, because I know what you're doing is not doing justice to the principle of free speech. You are abusing free speech so that you can abuse other people. To use an analogy to demonstrate what I mean, that's like when the abuser tells the kid that if you don't let me abuse you, you're blocking my free speech. You want me to let you abuse me or abuse the people who come and join in the chat or join in the chat rooms? No, fuck off. This is something the system's been doing for a while now, folks, which is part of why it puts out some information. It engages in counter speech occasionally, talking about free speech online and how some of these platforms like Fartbook and Twigger have to now become protected services where a code of conduct will be required and this kind of shit. They're encouraging people to fall into this misuse of free speech to just abuse each other. They create a lot of the hate groups deliberately, so it pushes people in a certain direction. They encourage people to do things like trolling, to go and hate on each other, because then it creates a justification for them to come in and go, oh, see, you can't have nice things because you all just throw shit at each other all the time. You're like little toddlers in the playpen arguing over who gets to play with the castle today. No, you've got to be separated. You've got to have a wall built between you. So now you can't engage with each other anymore. You have to stay 6 feet apart. And you have to stay 6 feet apart in your cognitive interaction as well. And they disguise it as free speech. No, fuck off. I'm sorry I've been swearing a lot today, folks. Apologies for those of you that maybe don't like the naughty words, but language is language, and sometimes emotional velocity is required. And I think to somebody who knows who they are, if they hear me say this, who I sort of borrow that phrase from. She said it to me once ages ago, and I thought, what a brilliant way of explaining it. Emotional velocity in your words. In other words, it provides more emphasis on certain things. It adds that little emotional connection to things. I will use bad language, naughty words occasionally to make a point. Language is language. There's no such thing as a bad or naughty word. It's just how everything is interpreted by the receiver of those words. Yeah. So thanks for joining in the chat room, folks. Thanks for sticking with it. For those of you that have, hello to everyone that joined in. I'm sorry if I missed some out from earlier. I think I said hello to you guys. Lots of Lost Horizon. Hiya, Debbie. Thanks for joining in. Keep your phone permanently turned off there. Yeah, it's probably a good idea. And Dolov FM. Hello, mate. Made in UK PLC. Hello. Dr. Rox there. Hello. Krishna, hello, mate. Thanks for joining in. I'm guessing you're at work at the moment. Don't work too hard. Don't drink all the stock. Churus Rosin, hello. And Hive Mind Concussion, hello. Lots some tap throw, hello. I think I might have missed a few people out. Sorry if I have, because the StreamYard chat will only ever go back so far. Contact trace the internet for world peace. Okay. I don't think that would work, right? If you contact trace the internet, it's not going to cause world peace. Yeah. Well, maybe you're just making an ironic statement. So that, Bright, hello. Bright 77. Right, I think I'll scroll all the way back down again. Yeah, okay. Like I said, if I didn't give you a shout out, sorry, I can only see so much of the chat at the moment. But thanks for joining in. If you did, thanks for listening. Don't inhale your own gas. It's a blast from the past. It's not healthy for you. Uh, try and see through a lot of these psychological methodologies that they try and throw at you. And sometimes it is just somebody who wants to be a bit of a troll and they like to have a giggle at people getting angry or whatever. Just tell them to F off and move on. Don't let it slow you down. Don't let it spoil your day. Don't let it spoil your enjoying of the sunshine and getting some vitamin D. And don't let them fool you. I started thinking of Bob Marley then. Right, I'm going to shut up now because I'm starting to waffle. I will see you on Monday night and have a great weekend. Thanks all. Catches.